Welcome back to Christ, Coffee, and Conspiracy. I'm Leigh Ann. This is Sheri. We're so happy that you're here today. We are going to be talking to you today about prophecy being fulfilled to prove to you that we could very well, we believe we are in the end times, and we want to make sure that you are armoring up with God and with as much information as you can possibly get. So we hope you enjoy this podcast. Let us know in the comment section below what prophecies we may have missed, because we want to get the word out and just really help people understand biblical prophetic information that will help them get stronger in their faith. And outside of that, please remember to subscribe, share, like, all the things, and we hope you enjoy this podcast.
I know that for a lot of people, I think it's hard to believe that we can be possessed, that there are demons.
Yeah.
And it's it's not all like The Exorcist with the head spinning and stuff like that, but it's just like, there's things that can change a person.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, there's a lot of demonic influence, whether it's possession or just a whisper in the ear that makes you hear something opposite of what you might believe. That can be
am I hearing God, or am I hearing, and there's where the discernment comes in too. It's like you're hearing that whisper. Is that God or is that a demon? We don't, only you can really discern that, but you have to put it to the test too.
Absolutely.
Is it true? Is it true? Is it in alignment with the Bible?
Exactly. That's what I was just going to say. God will never, ever, ever say something contradictory to his word. So if that's what you're hearing in your ear, it's demonic.
It's demonic. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's a lot of evil that's gone on with the Pope and with the the Catholic Church, and we'll learn more about that.
Yeah. So yeah, that just came to mind. I should probably tell everybody about that movie because it was fascinating.
Well, and you've probably heard too that they have to tell us the truth, and there's a lot of truth in a lot of these movies.
Yes.
And we just thought they were entertainment, right? Or it's fantasy, but there's a lot of truth in it. And when we go back and look at some of these movies, we're like, whoa, it's lining up with all the different things that are going on or that have gone on, and so listening to some of that, and you can also maybe foretell what's going to happen as well.
Well, that's a good point. That's a really good point. Yeah. Because they do. A lot of it is plotted and planned by the demonic forces that rule society, right? The upper echelon of our government, other governments, foreign governments. They're not. These people are puppets that are being manipulated by a much higher presence than human. So
yes.
Yeah.
Perhaps the head of these fallen angels.
Yeah.
So
this world was intentionally given to Satan to be his playground until the second coming of Christ. So we're now seeing all of that unfold. What it's really going to look like.
We're seeing a lot of it.
Yeah.
A lot of the prophecies are coming true.
They absolutely are. They absolutely are. We're seeing. So in 1948, Israel became a nation again, and the book of Amos actually was where the prophecy of Israel being rebuilt came into place. And it said, God said to Amos, I have to read this note because I can't use my phone. God said, I will restore the fortunes of my people Israel, and they shall rebuild the ruined cities and inhabit them. And that was just a tiny little piece of Amos 9:14 through 15. But basically he goes on to talk about how they're going to rebuild. And then in Ezekiel 37, there's two different sections in Ezekiel 37 that prophesy about Israel being reborn, and Ezekiel 34, there's also verses in Isaiah that talk about the reconstruction of Israel, the people coming back and re-inhabiting Israel. And so yes, one of the biggest arguments that I've gotten recently, especially with this war that's going on, is is Israel a people or is Israel a nation? And the answer to that is yes. It's
Mhm.
both. Israel is Jacob. Jacob was renamed Israel by God, but he was renamed Israel because that was going to be the people that were going to be God's chosen people. So he was the head of Israel, and his name was Israel, but he created that nation of Israel and the area that we know today to be Israel, the one that so many people think is Palestine. So Palestine was actually um, that area was not named Palestine until 136 AD after Christ's death. After Christ's death, I know that's not what AD means, um, but they did it as a smack in the face. Rome did it as a smack in the face to the Israel people, to the Jews, and Philistine, I think was the emperor's name at the time, called it Palestine. And that is how Palestine got its name. It was never an actual nation. It didn't mean anything. It has no historical background. It's a baby in terms of when the area was born, all of that. It was really just to slap Israel in the face and say, we're taking your land from you and we're going to rename it so no one ever knows that it was you. And so in 1948, after World War II, Israel was reestablished in one day. In one day. And the Bible also talks about
Mhm.
a nation being reborn in one day. And so that document was signed in that one day. And he talks about my people will come from the north, south, east, and west, and they will re-inhabit their land. And that's exactly what has happened over the last 75 years. And so Jesus says in Luke 21:32, today, truly I say to you, this generation, oh, hold on, I can't see. I gotta take my glasses off. Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass until all this has happened. So basically what Jesus is saying is once Israel becomes a nation, the second coming will happen before the end of that generation. How many people do
Mm.
you know that are still
Interesting.
alive that were born in the generation of 1948? And that definitely leaves an open question of what is a generation in God's mentality, right? Because we don't know when he's really coming back.
Right.
But through
Right.
those last 75 years, how many of those prophecies have we seen fulfilled that tell us that we are going to come into the end times? Because that is officially the start of the end times, according to most theological scholars.
Mm. Interesting. That is interesting. And you were talking about the people coming back to Israel,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
So what have we seen with this war? We've seen a lot of people come back to Israel to fight
Yep.
for Israel. So I think that's interesting, as
Yep.
well. You know,
And
and
they've
that
told their
you
people to come back because they're in danger across the world right now. So they're asking them to return to the homeland.
But many are just returning because they feel that they need to be there to fight for their country, even though they've been living, somewhere else. But they need to come back and take care of their people,
Yeah.
um, which is very interesting. Yeah.
Sorry, let me put my phone on do not disturb. Keep going.
Yeah, no, and I was yesterday. Somebody asked me about how I felt about Israel, Israel, Palestine, or Hamas, and I'm like, well, it's you've got good people in Israel and Palestine, and if you've, I think they're caught in the middle. I think there's wars coming on. They're
Hmm.
not necessarily of their making,
Hmm.
right? So these good people are caught in the middle of these wars and are having to fight these battles. So Hamas, I think, is something different. I think it was created out of evil. Um, so that's different. But if I've heard many stories about how the Palestinians and the Israelis worked together and they were friends. So, it's not, they would each take care of each other's kids because they would go to their services at different times and different days. So they would each take care of their kids during those times. And so they helped each other. So I think this, a lot of it's contrived, from the evil at the top.
Yeah.
But, going back to, you're also, another thing that we're going to see, I guess, is wars and rumors of wars, right? So here we've got wars, we've got Ukraine, we've got the Israeli wars going on in that area. But I would step back and take a look at what other kind of wars are we facing. For the past 3 years, we have been at war with the medical industry. They've been trying to take us down. Okay. So that is another war. We've got all different kinds of wars going on at the same time. And it may not be guns and bullets, but we may be being shot by something, or some of the people are being shot by something. And so, I was even thinking about this yesterday where, what a great way to take out a military. Vax them up.
Oh,
and vax is in air quotes because I was not a vax. But, that was the people who do not want to take that jab have left. And then the other ones, there's a good amount of them that now are incapable.
Yeah.
They're suffering different situations. So our military is kind of a little bit decimated, which just goes back to what we talked about before with them trying to fill our military again. So that was another attack. And that attack was on the whole world. It was on the whole world. So, think about that. And then think about the attacks also. We also were at war for freedom of speech.
Oh, yes.
We are not allowed to speak. Okay. There was, I don't know if you knew this, but Leigh Ann is in a different place right now. And if you see her video going a little wonky, it's because she has traveled and she's not in her normal place. But so when you were traveling from Alaska to California, Rumble was down. There was a cyber attack against Rumble by supposedly the Chinese.
Really?
Yes.
I did not hear.
Yes, because I went in. Yeah, I know. I almost sent you the article, but it was like, while I went in to edit our video, and it was like, I couldn't even get in. And it was just, I couldn't get in for like half the day. So, think about all these other attacks or wars, because there's a lot of them. There's a war against our guns. Yes. We're the last country that has those guns. So, think about things in different ways too when you're reading the Bible. It's not just, guns and bullets, bang, bang, or it's a lot more than that we're fighting. So
that's a very good point. And I agree. I think cyber wars are becoming more and more something that we need to concern ourselves with, because banks are being attacked. Hotels are being attacked. Hotels are being held ransom. We're not going to give you this information, and we're going to put all these people's information out in the dark web unless you pay us so many millions of dollars. So it is. I love that you pointed that out. It's definitely a war from many different perspectives, not just guns and fists.
Right. And our children is just another one. And we've talked about that quite a bit. To children, they're at war also. We're at war to protect our children from so many different things.
Well, and
lives.
Yeah. And that kind of rolls into yet another prophecy that's being fulfilled to show us that it's end times, because Jesus says when he's doing his Sermon on the Mount and when he's answering specific questions to his disciples, that fathers will be against sons, sons against fathers, mothers against daughters, and daughters against mothers. And you can read that in, any of the books, really, any of the epistles. But when he says that, you look at like what you were just saying about our children, And I just finished the book, The Return of the Gods, which I've spoken about on this podcast a couple of times already, but he talks about specifically where you see that the family break, right? And so there have been things that have been leading up to it for generations, but in the 60s specifically, the Vietnam War, it according to that book, and I think it's so fascinating to me, there are the three main biblical gods, little g, Moloch or Baal, who is like the most powerful. And if you look at symbology, you can see the bull, like the bull is the symbol of Baal, and then Moloch, who is the god of child, like he where you see so much of the sex trafficking and the molestation and the incest. That's Moloch. He loves sacrifice of children, whether it's death or
Mhm.
by some horrible tragic event. And then there's Ishtar, who is the goddess of war and the goddess of love. And so that's where, when Ishtar truly returned, that's where we started seeing the gay pride movement become so big. And it started in the 60s, even though we didn't see the acceptance of it until much later than that. That's where the movement really took its turn and became very public. And we started knowing actors in Hollywood who were living gay lives. People wanted to be free in their love. That's where the free love movement started. And so we started seeing this happen. And what happens even today, I just had a conversation with my in-laws last night about a family friend of theirs who the family is devout Catholic, and their child just married someone of the same gender, and they're having a big party for them this weekend. And so for me, I don't know that I would go to that route because my faith would not allow me to go that route, even with my own child. I would still love her, but I would stand firm in my faith and my beliefs, and I don't think I would embrace it. I don't know that though. I'm not in that scenario, and I doubt I ever will be. But the point being is that's where you see a lot of the fathers and sons and the mothers and daughters where they're against each other because the nuclear family value, the biblical family value has been split. And now that movement has gone so far in the political sphere that, like, my daughter has a really hard time and is against me because I'm pro-life, because she believes the narrative that what if I got raped, what if something happened, what if my life was in danger, what would so they take that tiny small minute percentage of people that this actually happens to, and they blow that up into the whole world is going to have this right taken away from them. And because everybody gets raped and gets pregnant, and everybody has incest and gets pregnant, and so they've turned it into this huge concept which has divided families, because I would never support her aborting a child. And I say that and if you've watched any of our other podcasts, I say that as someone who is a born again Christian who has had an abortion, and I have to live with that every day. And I know I have to, I know I've been forgiven for it, but the way that the world is going right now, the division that we see right now, the power of the demonic influence that we see right now in this world, those people who are doing it for birth control today are doing it because it is promoted, it is encouraged, the whole thing is disgusting. And the time that I did it, which was over 25 years ago, it was not promoted. It was still something that was very taboo. It was something that you never wanted anybody to know. And when I see people today, like I saw a man who was transgendered and said he wanted a uterus just so he could abort a baby. I mean, we are definitely living in a demonic world. It's so evil out there. So that's where I just believe that the family is broken. And my in-laws and I were having a conversation about that last night because, my family, I'm an only child. When my mom passes, I will have nobody left on my mom's side of the family, literally nobody. And my father's side of the family and I don't have a connection. So, which there's only a couple of living relatives from that side of the family too, but we didn't have that family dynamic. We didn't have that closeness. We didn't have that I'm here for you for everything. We had the get the hell away, pardon my language, but that's really what it was like, as fast as you can because these people are crazy. And so what did I do? As soon as I turned 30, I moved to Alaska. My father took off and left when he was a kid, and he's lived all over the country, and we don't have a relationship today, but he did everything he could to stay away from his family. My uncle did the same thing, and we just did not have, from the time I was a teenager, a strong family. Well, my husband's grandfather passed away over the weekend, this past weekend, and it just happened to happen right before we came to California. So we're having a family function tonight, and it's a dysfunctional family function, and so we were talking about that. But my father-in-law is from England, and his family is so tight knit. They're very close to each other. He's the only one that left the country and moved over here, but they still
Mm.
talk every week. They still have a family dynamic. They never speak ill of each other. There's love, there's bond, there's commitment. So it's interesting to me how America, and I know there are other countries like this, but when you look at America and the family dynamic in America versus other cultures across the country, we're sick. We're a very, very sick country because we don't have that historically ingrained nature to be close to our family. And so I really believe that it started here in the melting pot of the world, because there's nothing homogenous about us. There's nothing family oriented about us. We're just here to make a living and make some money and move on. And that's how I believe that Ishtar and Moloch were able to dig in here, and I think that it started here in the US and it has worked its way around the country, and it just blows my mind when you look at a Muslim person, somebody who was raised Muslim, who is flamboyantly gay today. What? So it's definitely reaching far and wide.
Yeah, which is highly unaccepted in their religion. So they
Yeah,
would be killed for
exactly.
in the country. So that's very interesting. But yeah, um, while you were talking, it is interesting because I would say back in the 40s, 50s, families were tight. They took care of each other. Farming was the thing, right? And they came together and they did things together, and they did not move away.
Right.
And I think that I was just thinking about this. It's like, so what made us start moving away? Well, we got the big city lights. We got to go to the big city because that's where we're going to make money, or got to go to Hollywood, but I think it also may have started with, it was a big thing to go away to college. Well, once you've gone away to college, now you've broken that separation with the family, and it's a lot easier to, oh, well, I got a job in New York now. I know that, the rest of my family's in Florida, or a lot of them, but they're even spread out in Florida, So it's like, I think those are things that also were, separating us, and that it started back at that point. It could have been in the 60s, 50s, 60s that started. And it was insidious again, all of these little changes, insidious, and then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, the family values went with that too, right?
Yep.
Your kid's gone, moved away, can't, they're not as tied in. And a lot of times when the kids left, they also left the church. So that was
Especially if
another
they're
thing
going
that
to
happened.
college. Excuse me.
Yeah, they left and went wherever to find their fortune or to go to college. But I would say too that with Obama, there was rifts being made between peoples. So we had racism, which
Yes.
had, to me, had been really, because I've seen the changes. I remember when I was in elementary school and the first Black people came to our school, and I was just like, and there was a big to do about it. And I was just like, well, why is there such a big to do about this? I don't understand. But, and how it's changed over the years. And I was in Florida, so I wasn't in the deep South where it would have been, probably vastly different. But, so there was the racism then there was also politics, and there was all these different things that created rifts between the families, because I saw it in my own family. My children went off to school. Their values changed from mine.
Yeah.
Mine are more conservative. Theirs not so much. So our views in politics are extremely different, and honestly, I've I've been called all the things on CNN, the racist,
Oh yeah.
misogynist, all of the things.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, whoa. But I mean, I think that's a lot of what's happened too. And I'll take that back to, there's another war. This is another war that we're fighting. So, this, it's just now wars between families.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's so sad. So sad.
No, it is sad. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. But then, another thing I think that we're seeing too is the persecution, right?
Absolutely.
So the persecution of Christians. And I looked this up yesterday, guys. I was curious about it. And I'm like, there's actually a world watch list. And they tell you the top 50 nations that are the highest in annual ranking of the 50 countries where Christians face the most extreme persecution. And I thought, well, that's really interesting. And I'm like, is the U.S. on here? And no, they were not. No, the U.S. was not. Most of them are, in the Middle East and whatnot. So, but the top, I'll just give you 5, is for 2023 is North Korea, Somalia, Yemen, Eritrea, which I've never heard of. It starts with an E, and Libya. And Nigeria is number 6, actually. So the North Korea is considered agnostic.
Okay.
Then the next 4 that I mentioned are Islamic. But Nigeria is Christian, predominantly
Yes.
Christian country. So, and they're we've got Asia represented twice, and we've got Africa represented the other 4 times. So that's where the top persecution is. And some of the stats I found were really interesting too. It says more than 360 million Christians suffer high levels of persecution and discrimination for their faith. And in the top 50 countries alone, 312 million Christians face very high or extreme levels. And then 1 in 7 Christians are persecuted worldwide. 1 in 5 Christians are persecuted in Africa, which makes sense with those numbers. And then 2 in 5 in Asia. 5,621 Christians are murdered every year. 2,110 churches attacked, and 4,542 Christians detained. 5,621 the Christians were killed for faith-related reasons last year. So I found that really interesting.
Yeah.
And that's
I
not.
did wonder if those numbers were low with what we hear in church.
They could be. They could be low. I don't know. This is just this is called opendoors.org.
Okay.
So I don't know. I just ran across it, and apparently they do this study every year.
Okay.
And let you know.
Okay.
And then the rankings of the countries will change also.
Okay.
Because I think they were talking about the fact that Nigeria had moved up. So
if I'm not mistaken, Nigeria is the area that we were talking about last week briefly, where the extreme Islamists are going into the churches and just mowing them down and killing them. And they're still going to church because they believe in the power of God much more than they believe in the evil of Islam. So they're, North Africa is definitely in the throes of persecution right now. But I don't as much as that's the extreme version of persecution. We're in it here in the US too. That, you think about what happened during COVID and the shutdown, and the churches were supposed to close down, and
Mhm.
if you didn't close down, you got fined or whatever the case may be. And there were quite a few churches that stayed open. There was one in Canada I know that stayed open. And then after everything was all said and done, they arrested the guy in Canada, the pastor in Canada, for
Yep.
leaving the church open. But they're also, I can't remember, some Midwest city recently this year, they arrested a guy for praying in front of an abortion clinic. So,
Yep.
or not an abortion clinic, I'm sorry. He was praying in front of a pride parade, and he was just praying. He was literally standing on the side of the street just praying, and trying to give scripture to people. And that's where the persecution is happening here. Yes, people, I mean, there obviously are people that are dying, just like the transgendered person that went into the school and killed all those children. There are attacks, there are, murderous attacks on Christians here in the US, but it's much more our freedom of speech. It's much more our ability to walk down the road and profess our faith. It's, those kinds of things are what we're being persecuted for. It's the mainstream media that says, if you're if you go to the gym and work out, then you're a right-wing Christian. Like, it's just absolutely ludicrous, the attacks that we're seeing over here. They're very much more verbal. It is people getting arrested for things, and the guy, he won his lawsuit, but it's happening, and it happens like that in a free state like we have here this way. But it will only get worse unless Christians start fighting back, which is what we're here to do. That's why we created this podcast. We wanted to talk about, all the things that we need to be paying attention to. God's got us. It doesn't matter what our persecution is. The bigger question is, how strong is our faith, and can we get through it without allowing the demonic influence to take over? And the answer to that question is absolutely. God's much stronger than Satan, and he will take care of us through everything. But the temptation is the hard part, right? Because everybody wants to make it either look super scary, where you don't want to go down that road because it's scary, or they want to make it look really attractive. And I don't know how some of these things are becoming so attractive to some people who were maybe raised Christian and decide they want to go down that path. But that's the whole purpose of it, right? Satan wants to woo you or scare you into doing anything non-biblical. And that's the war. That's the end times prophecy being fulfilled. Is you're seeing a lot more people being wooed into doing the things that are anti-biblical, because that's how this is supposed to go. But the idea is to create more people of faith, to bring more people into faith, to have another great awakening, so that we can all be raptured into the clouds when that day comes, because it's coming. And the prophecies that we've talked about today are the clear sign that that day is coming soon.
We don't know when, so gotta be ready.
That's right. That's right. And as
Mhm.
Sheri says all the time, put your armor on every day, because there's going to be an attack, whether it's in your brain, in your body, whatever. There's an attack coming every single day. So armor up.
Yep, armor up. Can do it every day,
Yep.
multiple times if you need to. Whatever makes you feel good. I've done that before, so.
That's right. Mhm.
Yes.
Well, again, like Sheri said, I'm traveling. I'm in California for a visit with my in-laws, and to prepare to move back down here. And I know the computer's very spotty. I'm in my mother-in-law's she shed, and there's no internet, so I'm on the hotspot. So I do apologize for all the just glitches in the video, but I do think the audio probably recorded pretty well. So if it
It
didn't,
seems to, yeah.
you'll never see this video because we'll have to re-record it. However, if it did, we hope you enjoyed it. We hope that you learned something today about prophecy. We hope that you will testify to people that you know and help bring them to the foot of the cross through Jesus Christ, because it is our time. We have to keep witnessing to people. We have to keep letting them know because we are in it. We are in it, and he could come back in 5 minutes. So build your faith, build your armor, and help others to know him too. And with that, we'll say goodbye, and we'll see you next week. Have a wonderful week.